Now I get to introduce one of my hero girlfriends. She has fearlessly secured and paved the path that her father and mother forged before her by devoting over 40 years to the adamant pursuit of justice and the promotion and the protection of human rights around the world. Please welcome Robert F. Kennedy and Ethel Kennedy's relentless peace warrior and my ride or die, Kerry Kennedy.
Hey everyone, are you having a good time?
Yes.
All right. I love that. I am so honored to be here and part of this evening. For myself and many, many members of the Kennedy family, John Lewis was a continual and steady presence in our lives. He was really a father figure to all of us. And he shared a special bond with my mother, Ethel, and he was a guiding force in helping to start and found Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights to become the organization that it is today. If there's a particular day that stands out in my mind which encapsulates exactly what he meant to us and to the world, it's from one spring 15 years ago during the annual Faith and Politics pilgrimage to Selma, the march that John led to commemorate Bloody Sunday. And that day, John took a seat, not in the buses that held the powerful members of Congress and the major donors. Instead, he chose the one that held my mom, my 9 and 11-year-old daughters, a bunch of siblings and cousins, and dozens of nieces and nephews, mostly young teens, 40 Kennedys and John Lewis. As we began our trip, he stood behind the driver and recalled his mother's warning not to get into trouble. But civil rights work, he told us, was different. It was good trouble. He told us about being a freedom rider, the group of 13 women and men, black and white, who confronted Jim Crow and the Interstate Commerce Clause, riding Greyhound buses across the South in 1961. When they reached Montgomery, the police escort that Daddy had negotiated with the governor abandoned the riders, and an enraged mob of Klansmen and other white supremacists attacked the riders with baseball bats and table legs. John told us that he made his way that night to Reverend Ralph Abernathy's First Baptist Church. And he said a few hundred parishioners huddled themselves in the pews and sang, "We shall overcome." Meanwhile, the mob, now 5,000 strong, shouted racial epithets and hurled bricks and Molotov cocktails through the sanctuary's shattered stained glass. He said Dr. King, Reverend Abernathy, and he called Daddy from the church basement to bring in the National Guard to disperse the mob. He said, "Kerry, if not for your father, I don't know that I'd be alive today." When I was a child, Daddy told us there was no group he admired more than the Freedom Riders. John's courage was integral to my father's commitment to civil rights, giving a clear voice to the struggle to end racial segregation and discrimination in the United States. When Daddy ran for president, he asked John to help organize the Black community in Indiana. Working with local organizers, John arranged Daddy's largest Black rally in the state in Indianapolis on April 4th, 1968. When Daddy's campaign plane landed in Indianapolis, Mayor Richard Lugar called and begged him not to go to that rally. Daddy asked John for his advice. John said, "Come." Daddy went. Standing side by side with John that night, Daddy delivered the shocking news of Reverend King's death to the crowd. He said, for those of you who are Black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and distrust at the injustice of such an act against all white people, I can say that I feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed by a white man with a gun. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom and compassion towards one another and a feeling of justice towards those who still suffer in our country, whether they be white or they be Black. That night, 125 cities across our country went up in flames. Dover, Delaware was under martial law for 9 months, in large part because of John and Daddy's work in the community together. Over the 5 preceding years, Indianapolis remained calm. A few weeks later, John, Dolores Huerta, and Cesar Chavez were organizing the GOTV effort in California, the Get Out the Vote effort. Okay, just imagine a knock on your door, and those are the 3 asking you to vote, so it's no wonder that Daddy won. John was at the Ambassador Hotel the night of the primary when a terrorist killed my dad. John cried, he told me, all the way back to Atlanta. Along with my brothers and Uncle Teddy, John was a pallbearer at Daddy's funeral and sat with us on that 8-hour train ride from St. Patrick's Cathedral to Union Station, and then went with us on to Arlington. When we reached Washington, the funeral corsage drove right along the encampments of the Poor People's Campaign, and John and the crowd broke out singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic, my father's favorite song. John didn't have to remain a steady presence in our lives in the years that followed, but he chose to. And exactly what that meant for us is difficult to put into words. At RFK Human Rights, he sat on the board for decades. He was a critical force designing our programs, our inspiration for our Speak Truth to Power lesson plans for students, a recipient of the RFK Ripple of Hope Award. My last long conversation with John came as I was writing a book in 2018, and I asked him how he felt 4.5 decades after being bludgeoned by state troopers. He replied with one word: grateful. I'm grateful too. Grateful for John's moral courage, for his loving heart. Grateful he used his time on this earth to advance the causes of civil rights and social justice, cementing himself as one of the last remaining unifying forces in American politics, perhaps the last. Grateful for his ability to speak truth to power, be it over the Iraq War, over gun violence, or over the structural racism that pervades American society. I miss him every day. When we leave here tonight, let us also be grateful. Remember John's legacy of courage and justice, and recommit ourselves to good trouble, necessary trouble. Thank you.